A very good morning, girls. For today's class, we're going to discuss a poem by Hopkins, Spring and Fall. Hopkins was an English poet among the leading Victorian poets. He was one of the leading Victorian poets, greatly influenced and impressed by the work of Christina Rossetti because she became one of his greatest contemporary influences. Hopkins' philosophy emphasized the individuality of every natural thing, which he called inscape, and to Hopkins, each sensuous impression has its own elusiveness, selfness. Each scene to him is a sweet, special scene. Moved by the death of five Franciscan in shipwreck in 1875, he broke his 7-year silence to write the poems The Wrack of Deutschland, in which he succeeded in realizing the echo of a new rhythm that had long been haunting his ear. It was rejected, however, by the Jesu magazine, The Month. He also wrote a series of sonnets strikingly original in their richness of language, use of rhythm, including the remarkable The Windhover, one of the most famous analyzed poems in the language. Hopkins died of typhoid fever and was buried in the Glasfin Cemetery, Dublin. Among his unfinished works was a commentary on the spiritual exercises of Saint Ignatius of Loyola, founder of the Jesu order. If you're going to talk about the work that is there, so he has written a lot of sonnets and a lot of poems. For example, The Wrack of Deutschland, Moonrise, Spring, God's Grandeur, The Caged Skylark, In the Valley of the Elbe, Pied Beauty, Carrion Comfort, Windhover, Spring and Fall, Habit of Perfection. I've also provided you what are the basic major themes that he works on. So the basic themes that are there that he works on is nature. His poems begin with the appreciation of nature in the context of the content of his poetry. He was the follower of romantic flavor of poetry. God is categorized as one of the prominent themes, or rather the most prominent theme that manifests itself in Hopkins' poetry. This characteristic of his poetry brings out a very important Victorian element, that is religion. Then he talks about the manifestation of God in nature. So there are plenty of things that he is talking about, and in this particular poem, Spring and Fall, as you can see, the title suggests he is talking about, you can consider it as that he is talking about spring and fall. Spring is a season of new beginning, hope, where you have new life, and fall is obviously refers to autumn. And it can also talk about, it can also refer to your old age or your death. And if you you see that he has also written a subline to it, that is to a young child. And who's that young child? And the name is given in the very first line, and that name is Margaret. So Margaret, as you can see, is an imaginary child. So when Hopkins wrote this poem, there was no child as such, but he is just sitting in the room and looking out at the garden, and then he imagines a girl by the name Margaret. So that is why it says spring and fall to a young child. But if we are talking about this particular poem, we are not looking at spring and fall as seasons, but we are looking as spring as youth age and fall as old age, because the basic concept that is there in the poem is about maturity and immaturity, about innocence and about knowledge, about wit, about the trials and tribulations that a person has to face in their life. So that is why when he is referring to this girl, to a young child, he's trying to tell that this particular girl, this young child Margaret, she is not accumulated with the evils of the society. It's because she is a young child, she has not seen anything whatsoever happens in anybody's life. There is no problem in her life. So if you're going to have a look at the poem, it has a thematic implication of a sonnet. I hope you know what sonnet is. So sonnet is a 14-line poem divided into octave and a sestet, where your octave is it talks about any kind of problem or is questioning, and in the next 6 lines, that is the sestet, your poet, the writer, provides you with the solution or answers the question. So similarly, though the poem is not of 14 lines, but it has a thematic implication of a sonnet. So when I say it has a thematic implication of a sonnet, so what does that mean? That it raises a question and then try to find out a resolution for it. So when it is raising a question, it is trying to answer that question. So what is the question? So your poet begins with the poem by saying, Margaret, are you grieving over Golden Grove unleaving? So he is addressing this young girl, and by this young girl, as I have already mentioned, that she is not accumulated with the evils of the society. She is not accumulated with any pain that the life has to give you. So Margaret, but still she is grieving, still she is sad. And why is she sad? That's the question that he is asking her. So Margaret, are you grieving over Golden Grove unleaving? Over Golden Grove is leaves which have turned golden. So how a leaf would turn gold? It's not that he's talking about gold as an material, but the color of the leaf has changed. And why it has changed? Because it is about to die, because it is about to fall from the tree. So unleaving is dropping and shedding of leaves. So leaves are falling one by one. So Margaret, are you grieving over Golden Grove unleaving? Leaves like the things of man, you with your fresh thoughts care for can you? And now he's making a comparison. He's using a simile, and by using a simile, he's asking her a question. And what is the question? That it is impossible for her age to understand the things and the things of nature. So leaves like the things of man. What are the things of man? Things of man are the problems, the trials and tribulations, the bad situation, the bad times that a man faces in its life. So leaves have been compared to things of man. You with your fresh thoughts. Fresh thoughts are innocent thoughts. She is inexperienced, and fresh thoughts is opposition of poet's nature and experienced heart. So what is he trying to say? That you are very young, you have not seen life enough, you are not accumulated with the evils of the society, you have not gone through any trials and tribulation in your life, you have not faced any problem. So what sort of a heart you have? You have a heart which is full of fresh thoughts, new beginning. You have just started your beginning. It's just a age that has come to you. So you are very young to understand these things. That what are these things? Leaves like the things of man. Leaves like the things of man. So as there are multiple leaves on trees, similarly there are multiple problems in a human being's life. So he's asking her a question, that with your fresh thoughts care for can you? So can you, with your innocent thoughts, inexperienced thought, can you care about all such things? And then he says, as the heart grows older, it will come to such sides colder. So what is going to happen? As soon as her heart is going to grow older, how the heart is going to grow older? So as the human heart gains experience, it gets engrossed in itself, it will feel less moved by such sight. And what is the sight that he is talking about? The shedding of the leaves, the dropping of the leaves, the unleaving of the leaves. So as the heart grows older, so as soon as you are going to gain experience, as soon as you are going to have problems in your life, so you will not have time to give a look at such things. What are those things? The falling of the leaves. So as the heart grows older, it will come to such sight colders, by and by, nor spare a sigh, the worlds of vanward leaf meal lie. By and by is as time is going to pass, with greater maturity and experience, the heart will feel no regret for falling of leaves and other such scientific natural phenomena. Not scientific but natural phenomena. So by and by is as the time is going to pass, nor spare a sigh. You won't even have a single moment for what? For, that you're going to regret the falling of the leaves, though worlds of vanward leaf meal lie. So Hopkins has a tendency of coining new words. In multiple of his poems he has done this. So similarly in this particular poem he has coined two words, vanward and leaf meal. Van means W-A-N, van means pale, and wood means without any leaves. So vanwood here refers to pale, bloodless. So what is going to happen? So he is saying that as the time is going to pass, as these moments are going to go, as you are going to gain maturity, what is going to happen? You won't have, he's saying this to that little girl, to Margaret. So as the time is going to pass, you will not have a single moment, though what is going to happen? Though the worlds of vanward leaf me lies, leaves falls one by one. So as for an example, when you eat food, you eat bite by bite. You take one bite, then you take another bite. Similarly, what is going to happen? So in this complete world, there's going to be no leaves at all. So at the time of autumn season, what is going to happen? All the leaf sheds, all the leaves fall from the trees. Similarly, what is going to happen? Though the worlds of vanwood, every single wood here refers for forest, every single forest in this world is going to be leafless. There is going to be no leaf anywhere. And at that particular moment, he says, you'll not even have a single moment to look at this natural phenomena. And why she's not going to have a single moment to look at the phenomena, this natural phenomena? Because as the heart grows older, he has stated it in the previous line, so as the heart grows older, it will come to such sides colder. So as you are going to gain maturity, as you are going to grow up, you would be so engrossed in your own affairs, in your own materialistic aspect, that though the complete world would be without leaves, but still you are not going to give any single sign that you are grieving. But when it is going to happen? When she is going to be mature enough. Right now she is immature, that is why she is being sad, she is being crying for the falling of the leaves. And then he says, and yet you will weep and know why. But then he says, and still at that time you're also going to leave. That the child weeping over autumn leaves is really and here comes the basic theme of the poem. What is the basic theme of the poem? So when he is comparing falling of the leaves to human mortality, I hope you know what mortality is. When somebody dies, so a person who dies, we are immortal, we are mortals, because we're going to die. So he says, and yet you will weep and know why. So at that particular time, he says, though you are not considerate about the fact of the falling of the leaves, but at that particular time will also be crying, but the reason would be totally different. And what is going to be the reason? The reason would be human mortality. So as leaves are falling from the trees one by one, similarly the loved and dear ones in your family, your loved and dear ones, maybe it can be your family, they are your friends, or they are your neighbors, or close by, or acquaintances, they are going to die. So as leaves are falling one by one, similarly what is going to happen? Your loved ones and dear ones are going to die one by one. So that is the basic reason of your grief, of your sadness, of your crying, of your mourning. So what is the basic reason? Why is she crying? She's crying because of human mortality. And then he says, now no matter child the name, sorrow springs are the same. Now no matter child the name. So the name of a particular sorrow doesn't matter now, because sorrow springs are the same. So there is a pun in this word spring. Pun is something when you can interpret, or when you have two meanings, hidden meanings in a particular word. So here spring refers to, one spring refers to for season, and another spring refers to reason of a particular sorrow. So now no matter child the name, sorrow springs are the same. So the poet tells the child that the name of a particular sorrow does not matter. And why it doesn't matter any longer? Because all sorrows has one root cause, that is mortality. What is the single cause of all the sorrows that a person faces in their life? Is mortality. And what is that? That as the season goes in a cycle, what is the cycle? That you have autumn, then you have spring, then you have rainy season, then comes winter, and then so similarly, so there is a cycle. Similarly, your life is like a cycle. You are not going to be free from your problems. One after another, you're going to have problems in your life, because life is a combination of happiness and sadness. So he says, now no matter child the name. So name of a particular sorrow doesn't matter now. Why? Because because sorrows and springs are same. So as you're going to have spring every year, similarly you're going to have problem in continuously in your life. So one after another you're going to have problems in your life. It's a circulation form. It's a form. It's in a form of a circle. So one after another, you're going to have problems in your life. So that is why now, no matter child the name, sorrow springs are the same. So as leaves are falling from the trees one by one, similarly your loved and dear ones are going to die one by one. So as the leaves are falling, it's a process. Similarly, you're going to have new leaves. So in the same way, your loved and dear ones are going to die, because whosoever has taken birth in this world has to die one day, because we human beings are mortal. So that is why it's the main cause. The first line which he says, Margaret, are you grieving over golden grew one leaving? So he's actually trying to tell her that you are not crying, you are not sad because of the falling of the leaves, you are sad because you know of this particular fact that everybody who has taken birth in this world has to die one day. So nor mouth had, no nor mind expressed, what heart heard of, ghost guessed. It is the blight man was born for, it is Margaret you mourn for. So nor mouth had. What mouth here refers to is for words, because she is a young innocent girl. So she has no words to express herself. The little girl has no suitable words nor proper understanding for her grief, but her heart half knows that her spirit has guessed the cause of her grief. And what is that she knows? So nor mouth had, no nor mind. Mind here refers for understanding. She has no understanding. Why she has no words and no understanding? Because she is a young girl. So Margaret is a young girl. So nor mouth had, no nor mind expressed, what heart heard of, ghost guessed. But ghost here refers to the soul of man's soul. But in your heart, your soul knows the real reason of your grief. And what is the real reason of your grief? It is the blight man was born for, it is Margaret you mourn for. So what is the real reason? So blight is the original sin of man, for which he suffers the penalty of death. And what is the cause of weeping of Margaret is mortality. So what is our original sin? Our original sin is that whosoever has taken birth has to die one day. No one can be immortal. No one can survive in this world for thousands and infinite time. Nobody can do that. It is our original sin. What is our original sin? That if we have taken birth in this world, we have to die one day. So it is the blight man was born for. Blight again is an original sin of man, for which he suffers the penalty of death. And it is Margaret you mourn for. So Margaret's grief is due to human mortality, which implies her own mortality. Thus, without knowing it, Margaret is grieving over the fact that she too has to die one day. So what is the real reason of her weeping, of her feeling sad? That in her heart, though she has no words to express her feelings, though you can consider that she has no understanding, but in her soul knows about this fact that not only her loved and dear ones are going to die one day one by one, but she too is going to die, because she too is an immortal. So she too is a mortal. So Margaret, as I said, grieves is due to human mortality, which implies her own mortality. And what does that mean? That she too has to die one day. Thus, without knowing it, Margaret is grieving over this particular fact that she too will die one day. So I hope you have understood the poem. I hope you have understood the concept that Hopkins is trying to talk about. And what is the concept? That he has compared two seasons with what? With your old age and young age, with your innocence and maturity. So Margaret is a girl who is innocent, who is grieving for what? over golden grooves. Unleaving golden groove, as I said, is the falling of the leaves which have turned golden, the leaves which have changed their color. So she's crying for that, but then he rectifies his own self, and he's making her also understand that she's not crying because of the falling of the leaves, she's crying because of human mortality, because in deep down in her heart she knows that like her loved and dear one, she too is going to die one day. So this is the perception and the explanation of the poem by Hopkins, Spring and Fall. I hope you have understood the poem. I hope everything is clear with you. But if in case there is anything that you have not understood, you can let me know by posting it on Google Classroom. Thank you for today. Study, be safe, study hard, and try and write critical appreciations of the poems that we are doing. Thank you so much.